Welcome to Inside the Issues. My name is Amit Singh. The man in charge of the Los Angeles Unified School District faces some serious legal troubles. Today, federal agents raided the San Pedro home and the office of Superintendent Alberto Carvalho. According to the LA Times, the investigation involves a failed AI chatbot called Ed, which was partially developed 2 years ago and later scrapped after the company developing the technology filed for bankruptcy. Ryan Thompson has more.
The residence of the man leading America's second largest school district has drawn the FBI's attention. Agents executing search warrants at LAUSD Superintendent Alberto Carvalho's San Pedro home Wednesday in an early morning raid.
They had a guy in camo with a rifle pointing at him.
Carvalho's neighbor, John Schaefer, says agents told neighbors to stay inside as an armed unit entered Carvalho's home and eventually put someone in a vehicle.
I saw a gentleman from the behind getting cuffed and put into a vehicle. I don't know if it was him.
Spectrum News 1 was not able to confirm if anyone was detained in the operation, but the FBI did say a court-authorized warrant had been served at Carvalho's home, the downtown headquarters of the LAUSD, and a location in Florida. Former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani says the wide scope of the search is not unusual.
The superintendent of LAUSD is not a 9-to-5 job. This is a 24/7 type of job, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are potentially relevant emails, not just on those work servers, but at home and on those devices as well.
The LA Times reports that a source close to the investigation says the probe relates to Carvalho's involvement with a failed AI tech startup that secured a $6 million contract with the district. That company, All Here Education, filed for bankruptcy before any technology was produced, and the DOJ eventually charged its founder on fraud.
We will not allow abuse, intimidation.
Carvalho has led the district since 2022, but recently clashed with federal officials after turning away immigration agents at 2 LA elementary schools. Just last week, the district faced new pressure after the Justice Department joined a lawsuit alleging discrimination in desegregation programs. For now, LAUSD says it's aware and cooperating with law enforcement investigations, and district classes are continuing as normal. But questions remain about the future of the man in charge.
And just days after the district announced the chatbot in 2024, Carvalho joined me on Inside the Issues. I asked the superintendent about some people's concerns about the chatbot when it came to data privacy. Here's some of what we had to say. It's obviously harvesting a lot of data. People are thinking back to 2022, and there was a cyber attack and some leak for some very sensitive data for LAUSD people, students involved as well. What are the safeguards to prevent that from happening again?
One of the most important issues. Number one, we built this with trusted partners, best in class. We have partnered with federal entities to ensure the safety of this digital environment.
Now we're seeing the federal government involved in a different capacity in this developing story. And remember, Superintendent Alberto Carvalho came from Miami after 14 years leading the Public Unified School District for Miami-Dade County, knighted by Spain for his efforts in education. Governor Gavin Newsom recently shouted him out during the State of the State address, and he has had some tangible receipts to show for pandemic learning loss being combated, boosting attendance and test scores. Just this week, he's been talking about AP scores on the rise, but last week, the Department of Justice accused LAUSD of discrimination against white students. From what we understand, reportedly, this is more targeted to Superintendent Carvalho himself, not the district. We will have more on this story as it develops. Housing and housing shortages, a major issue in California, a factor in our state's homeless rate, cost of housing, and also the reason some people leave California entirely. They want cheaper housing. So we need more housing, yes, but there is disagreement over how much more we need. When Gavin Newsom was first running for governor, he said California needed to build 3.5 million units, basing that on an estimate from McKinsey in 2016. Since then, other firms have projected a wide range of housing deficits, and last summer, Moody's projected a deficit of just 56,000 units. This week, the Supreme Court declined to hear Huntington Beach's challenge to a state mandate requiring the city build more housing. Under a previous judicial order, the city has until mid-April to update its housing plan to include 13,000 additional housing units. Cody Taylor has that story.
You know, your necessary needs that you need for the household.
Sheila Mealy says she struggled on and off with homelessness for many years of her life.
Almost 3 years I was in a shelter, and I fought my way through that. to get myself out.
Sheila is currently staying in a Jamboree affordable housing unit in Buena Park. Jamboree is an Irvine-based nonprofit organization that offers affordable housing to families, seniors, and veterans in Orange County. And she says she pays 30% of her income for rent. She says she's been there for 3 years and has goals of getting her own apartment without assistance.
Right now, I'm working on financial stuff. And as soon as I get that financial taken care of, I can start looking into getting out of here.
Sheila says she would love to move to a city like Huntington Beach, but she says it's too expensive and feels there's not enough affordable housing available. For years, Huntington Beach city leaders have been arguing that state affordable housing requirements violate the city's rights as a charter city, and even took the fight all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to consider the city's appeal, ultimately putting an end to this battle. Casey McKeon, mayor of Huntington Beach, says this decision is disappointing. And he says the fight against affordable housing mandates in this city is not over.
Again, we're still in court against the state in state court. And so, we're still fighting to protect our local control with this housing element. And we're still working through that process.
Following Monday's announcement, Attorney General Rob Bonta said, "We look forward to holding the city fully accountable in state court, where we recently secured a decision that requires it to remedy its violations and significantly restricts the city's local control until it does." Mayor McKeon believes the state should be working with every city individually to see what affordable housing goals they actually can meet.
Those number of units, there's no science or data behind it. It's just arbitrary. And so all we've asked is for the state to work with each city individually to find what they can realistically produce.
Elizabeth Hansberg is the co-founder of People for Housing Orange County. She says in the past, the city of Huntington Beach was a decent producer of affordable housing. She doesn't agree with the direction the city is going now.
It is disappointing to see Huntington Beach turn away from that historic precedent that they had of being a community that was willing to build affordable housing.
As for Sheila, she says she's trying to make the money needed to be fully independent.
So if I move out, possibly put rent, light bills, Wi-Fi, cables, and stuff like that, that's what I worry about.
Working closely with Jamboree employees with the hope of a brighter future.
Well, we've been talking a lot about so-called runaway production here in Southern California. When we come back, we'll talk about a new proposal to incentivize post-production work, because that's part of the process too. We'll talk about it with the Assembly member who's got the plan. Stay with us, you're watching ITI, we'll be right back. We talked a lot about declining production for film and TV in Los Angeles and Southern California, a lot on this show. And lawmakers have been pushing to incentivize shoots to stay here in LA and across California. But that $750 million film and TV tax incentive for California is tied to principal photography. In other words, it doesn't apply to what we call post-production work like editing and sound effects. And data shows that work is declining across the state as well. But there is a push to incentivize that work too. Joining me now is Assemblymember Nick Schultz, a Democrat from Burbank, who's working on this very legislation. He joins me at the desk. It's great to have you. Welcome to Inside the Issues.
Thanks for having me.
This is a big conversation in so many ways. And I think for folks at home, we think a lot about keeping productions in California, and that feels important. But the post-production side, not covered by that incentive, it's an important part too.
It absolutely is. Look, when we passed Assembly Bill 1138 last year, I was proud to co-author it, and it did a lot of good for the industry. But admittedly, we were late to the ball game. We needed to do this years ago. And the other thing I would note is this. The legislation last year does include a provision for post-production, but only if the principal photography was in California. The reality is the industry is changing. 50 years ago, you had to come to California because we had the climate and the topography. You wanted to film a spaghetti western, this was the place to be. Times are changing, technology is emerging, and when you have other jurisdictions with competitive standalone tax incentive programs, we have got to compete to keep these jobs right here in California.
That is an interesting distinction and important for us to note. So what you're saying is that that big tax incentive says if your principal photography was here, then post-production can also be incentivized to some degree. But if your principal photography is elsewhere, let's say United Kingdom, Vancouver, Georgia, etc., but you still have editors here.
That's right.
This bill is helping that work stay here.
Exactly. And that's the reality is no matter, the gold standard is always to have production from beginning to end in Los Angeles, in California. But the reality is you can film a lot anywhere around the globe. We still have post-production careers right here in our district, right here in the state of California. We want to keep those jobs. We want to recruit more opportunities for folks to be gainfully employed.
You're seeing people and that work declining in your district, aren't you?
Absolutely. And a lot of folks ask me why I'm running this bill. It's personal to me. It's personal to the people of my district. People are hurting. And in 2026, people are worried about the future of this industry. They're worried about the cost of living, the high cost of housing. I can think of no better issue to be working on together this year. This is about keeping jobs in our district. This is about keeping people gainfully employed and giving them hope.
You know, you co-authored that bigger $750 million incentive, correct? So you've heard the arguments against these sorts of tax incentives. So say it's a race to the bottom. You don't necessarily see the money come back. Some economists have looked at that in terms of meaningfully contributing to the state GDP. And also there are some tough choices in a state that is often running a deficit. Right. Where does the money come from? And always the question, what does it come from in terms of services, healthcare or beyond? So how do you talk to people who say, well, you're going to take it from healthcare, where are you going to get this money from?
So I'd say two things. First of all, let's talk about the economic impacts of this tax incentive. We heard it with the Assembly Bill 1138, and this year with Assembly Bill 2319, my bill. I would argue this, if you look at the state of New York, which has a standalone post-production tax incentive program, just in Q4, they had about a little over $10 million in tax credits appropriated. The spending that they saw as a result of that tax credit was $57 million. The reason is because when you have post-production work right here in the state of California, it's not just benefiting those in the entertainment industry, the downstream and collateral consequences, all the mom and pop businesses that benefit from that economic activity. Staying in California, it is a huge boon to our economy.
So I remember you and I in break were talking about this. There's this podcast, it was Rob Lowe and maybe it was Adam Scott. It was two Hollywood guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of people saw this. Rob Lowe went viral for saying it's criminal what's happened in California and Los Angeles. The ways in which we've created all these friction points, it's become so expensive. The lots that used to be full are now empty. They've gone elsewhere. And so the question is it too late? Are we shuffling deck chairs? Or can editors afford to live here independent of productions? Wouldn't they go somewhere cheaper and just do it remotely?
It's a completely fair question. I would say it's never too late to do the right thing. I still believe that we can keep these jobs here. But to answer you directly, no, we should have done this decades ago. Yeah. This should have been done years ago. It's easy for me as a freshman legislator to sit here and say, well, if only my predecessors had done this or that. I'm not trying to cast aspersions or throw stones. But I think California has to admit that we have taken this industry for granted. And only now are we really waking up and saying we want to keep production and post-production jobs here in this state. That means we're going to have to compete with the number of other jurisdictions in the United States and internationally that have already taken this step. So many others already have a standalone post-production tax credit program. It's time that we join the fray.
Yeah, and to quote a Hollywood film, they've been drinking our milkshake on this, and so now here we are looking for a way to keep it here. You talked about why it's got to be done, where that money might come from. The question now is the timeline and the eligibility. Just talk us through that.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, this tax credit will be available, should it be passed, to productions where principal photography was outside the state of California. We've introduced the bill. Right now we're meeting with stakeholders. We're meeting with studios, independent post-production houses, labor. We're trying to get the stakeholders together to flush out the exact details of this bill. Okay. We'll be presenting it to Assembly policy committees and hopefully going through the appropriations process. And if any of your viewers find any of this interesting, something that they care about, now is the time to reach out to our office, provide a comment of support, and start reaching out to other members of the Assembly, especially the Los Angeles delegation. Let them know this is something you care about.
Yeah, and you've talked about this in terms of affordability too, right? I mean, this is obviously, and this is a big conversation we had with the State of the Union last night. What does this word mean? What does it mean to be affordable in California? This is one of the ways in which we can speak to that.
Absolutely, and I'll just briefly say this. We talk about affordability so much on one side of the equation. Yes, the cost of housing is too high. What we're paying at the pump is too high. The more increased cost you're paying at the grocery store, it's too high. But you can't just deal with costs. You also have to look at economic generation. We want to keep good quality, high-paying jobs here in California. This is a way to do that. I think this is an investment that we have to make. We can't afford to not make it. Yes, it's a difficult budget climate, but there is a way to get this done.
We hope it's not too late ultimately. ultimately. And we know that no matter what, this industry will remain an important part of the psyche and morale of the region. And any kind of proposed solution is worth discussing. Thank you for coming on and discussing it. Looking forward to seeing how it goes and talking to you more.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. So member Nick Schultz talking a bit about a post-production incentive bill, proposed legislation. We're not there yet, but it is a conversation of what happens to this industry that means so much to us here in Southern California. We're coming up. Stay with us. Tax season is few people's idea of a good time, but it's been an absolute nightmare for some people in particular after they received tax forms in the mail from a company where they never even worked. Renee Ng explains what happened next.
Tax season is usually a stressful time of year, but for Los Angeles residents, Patrick and Christina Lennon, they say it's been especially troubling ever since they got this 1099 tax form from Uber a couple weeks ago.
When I opened the form, I saw that, in fact, it was her name addressed to her with the last 2 digits of her Social Security number. So we were pretty concerned.
They're both self-employed, yet the form shows someone using Christina's personal information made about $6,000 last year driving for Uber. 2 days later, they got another 1099 form from the company saying she earned $1,300. The problem is, she's never driven for Uber. Lennon says his wife is the victim of identity theft and calling into question Uber's driver screening process.
The worry of who's driving the car and the risk of who you're getting in the car with.
The Lennons aren't alone. Over the past 2 weeks, people from across the country have posted on social media platforms, including Facebook and Reddit, complaining about the same problem. They received 1099 forms from Uber, despite never driving for the company. And since 2020, the Federal Trade Commission has received 354 complaints about this. Los Angeles attorney Todd Friedman specializes in consumer protection and says hundreds of people have recently contacted his office complaining about the same thing.
If you get a 1099 for $50,000 or over, it's a game changer, so it's a big deal. And that's why people are receiving these 1099s. And they're freaking out.
Friedman is representing a Kern County man who is suing Uber after getting a notice from the IRS that showed he earned over $53,000 in 2019, reported on a 1099 form, even though he's never driven for the company. The lawsuit was filed in 2024 and still pending.
And suddenly, in 2026, we started receiving an influx of phone calls and emails from people who are now dealing with the same exact issue as our client. So it's been quite a shock.
Lennon reached out to Uber twice about 2 weeks ago, and shortly after our interview, he got a response saying, "We found signs of identity theft, and rest assured the party in question has been banned from our system." His wife got corrected tax forms, but Lennon says Uber needs to do a better job vetting drivers and guarding against identity theft.
You never think it can happen to you. And when it does, it's just, kind of sucks. It's like an invasion of privacy.
Uber declined an on-camera interview, but they responded with a statement that read in part, "Identity theft and tax fraud are serious, evolving issues affecting individuals and businesses across many industries. We're aware that some people have reported receiving 1099s despite not driving or earning income with Uber, which may indicate their personal information was used fraudulently." The company also told us potential drivers must have a valid driver's license and social security number, along with a profile photo that matches their ID.
No one is immune from these types of scams, no matter what your level of education is.
The FBI also recommends taking these steps if you're a victim of identity theft. Freeze your credit and monitor your credit reports for any suspicious activity. File a police report and report identity theft to the Federal Trade Commission. Lennon has done all of that. He's worried about his wife's personal information still out there and how it might be used.
Not just a piece of paper that can be corrected between the person and the IRS. It's something that's affecting people emotionally, and can affect them or is going to affect us for the rest of our life.
Forcing them to stay vigilant while raising awareness about this type of identity theft.
California Governor Gavin Newsom announced the formal launch of the California Water Plan 2028 on Wednesday. The governor's office says it's the most ambitious water plan in the state's history, with a target of 9 million acre-feet in the state's water supply by the year 2040. That is enough water for 18 million homes. The plan will feature an advisory committee which includes water agencies, tribes, farmers, and environmental groups. Some new California legislative proposals are looking to increase the number of polling places for the 2026 and 2028 elections. They were introduced by Democratic state senators Tom Umberg and Sabrina Cervantes. You see SB 884, which would prohibit federal immigration enforcement within 200 feet of voting locations. It would also keep polls open longer if voting is disrupted by immigration enforcement. Also SB 73, which would require a court order for a federal government agency to inspect voting machines. Any changes wouldn't go into effect until the November election. In other words, the upcoming June primary would not have this pieces of legislation in effect, but it's a big conversation around potential voter fraud, as President Trump said in the State of the Union last night, and attempts to ward off some of that meddling, as Democrats in California feel. University of California schools experience a record number of applications from undergraduates for next fall semester. Roughly 250,000 people applied to the UC system from high schools and community colleges. Transfer applications also hit a high record. The high level interest comes amidst a deepening divide between the UC system and the Trump administration, with the federal government canceling hundreds of research grants. We have much more news coming up after the break. Stay with us if you're watching Inside the Issues. An LA mayor's race that has had varying degrees of interest over the past year got an unexpected jolt. Just hours before the filing deadline, City Councilmember Nithya Raman walked into the city clerk's filing office and joined the race, shocking the city, shocking the incumbent Mayor Karen Bass, shocking me. Councilmember Raman is the person who has the answers to what happens next, and she is right here in studio. Councilmember Raman, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
What's new?
Yeah, I've made some changes in my life
recently.
recently.
A couple of changes.
Yeah.
You were here Monday, February 2nd,
Yes.
and you and I talked briefly about, I asked you, would you get into this mayor's race? And you convinced me, I think you were convinced yourself, but
Yeah.
you can answer. You were like, no, right? Okay. And then by Saturday, you were in. So what changed from Monday to Saturday?
You know, like many people in Los Angeles, I had been following this mayor's race. There had been a will they, won't they from a number of people, Rick Caruso, Lindsay Horvath, and others. And accompanying all of that has been a lot of frustration on my part with the way that things are moving in the city. You know, I work on big issues. I care about big issues. I've come and talked on this platform about the big issues that I think about. I want to address the cost of housing here by building a lot more housing in LA. I want to address homelessness by building a true system that can take it on. I want to build more transit. I want to make sure people are safe in this city. These are all things that we're grappling with. But I'm doing all of this in the context of a city that is facing ever greater challenges.
Yeah.
ICE being here, these big Olympics games, and we're not even able to fix potholes. We're not able to keep our street lights on. It takes a year for me to fix a street light in my district right now. And for me, that frustration has been a very palpable part of my last year.
I think it's been palpable for a lot of people in the city of Los Angeles, and even Mayor Karen Bass has acknowledged that those frustrations exist. And I want to hear more about your vision, and I suspect we will tonight and in many conversations to come. But what changed from Monday to Saturday? Lindsay Horvath didn't get in. Rick Caruso didn't get in. Can I share one other thing that changed?
Yeah.
LA Times released a report that alleges that Mayor Bass directed edits to the After Action report. That happened after you and I were together. So how important was that report in your thinking?
You know, I think that report was emblematic of something that I have felt very deeply, which is that we need to be honest about the challenges that the city is facing. We need to be honest about whether we have been adequately prepared, whether it's for emergencies, whether it's for the presence of ICE in our cities, whether it's for taking on the essentials of city government right now. And I don't think we are being honest right now. And I was hoping that we would have a conversation about what would be the future of Los Angeles. How are we going to take on these big questions that lie ahead for Los Angeles? We are in, I think everyone can feel that Los Angeles is struggling right now. Everyone can feel that. I feel that so keenly when I talk to my constituents. Are we going to walk into another 4 years without talking about what needs to change in order for us to get out of this moment and to take on these crises and to emerge more resilient in the future?
If Horvath or Caruso got in, would you have got in on the back of that report?
I honestly do not know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it didn't happen. So it's hard for me to answer that right now.
One person who thinks that you would not have got in is the leader of the AFL-CIO, this LA County Labor Fed, who basically says that you were an opportunist for doing this and has had some other choice words about you, your relationship with Mayor Bass, someone who you had endorsed in this election, in fact. And reporting said that you endorsed her just a few weeks before deciding to get in, essentially. Is that the correct timeline?
Mayor Bass had asked for my endorsement a few months ago, but she announced the endorsement a couple of weeks prior.
Okay. And so when you hear people call you an opportunist, that you had no plans to run, and when you saw an open field, you have this alliance with Mayor Bass, who has stumped for you, who you endorsed, and you jumped in, and you hear that, what is your response?
You know, that feels like the language of political insiders to me, which has never been my lane. I started in this role and I ran for office as a volunteer in my neighborhood who was frustrated by the way in which the city was treating some of its most vulnerable residents. And even today, I feel like this next step and this decision was not made because I have an eye on my next political decision. I don't, whatever job I hold in December, I think is going to be my last political job.
Yeah.
And for me, that, it really was about what is the future of Los Angeles right now? How can I serve this city? How can I look my constituents in the face and tell them that I am fighting for them as hard as I can when there are big issues that we're not confronting in City Hall?
Some people feel like you could have waited to do that, and the AFL-CIO is amongst those people, right? You say, well, Mayor Bass, why create this distractions? I think are some of the language that they've used. A question for you, as an insurgent candidate against this incumbent, what do you view as Mayor Bass's biggest political vulnerability? And is it, in fact, this reporting on the after-action report on the fires? And if so, are you the best person positioned to take advantage of it?
I think that the fire response is a major vulnerability, and I think that there are real challenges with the way in which the city was preparing for those fires and the way in which that the mayor's office has responded to the aftermath of those fires that are real challenges. I will say, though, that as someone who, experiences so much else that is in the city, I feel like there are other real challenges right now that underscore, that underline this lack of preparation, a lack of proactivity, a lack of urgency in how we take on these crises. I feel like that is really what is present in this moment. We have a situation where we are not able to deliver on the essential services that we have as a city. Street lights, picking up trash, sidewalks, and we also have these immense challenges of affordability, of federal law enforcement being here and attacking citizens right on our streets. We have major issues that we are supposed to be tackling in parallel to one another, and I don't feel like there is an urgency or a proactivity or planning happening right now in the city, and I think residents can feel that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It feels like the satisfaction was happening with LA City, and you know this from being on City Council, and so you can understand that that is something for you to harness as a mayoral candidate. To some degree, you're on City Council, you have a voting record, we can talk about that as well, addressing some of these issues. But for you to be in a position to handle the challenges as mayor, you got to become mayor. And now we've got this abbreviated timeline, right? And you don't have labor, which is a big interest here, AFL-CIO. They've endorsed Mayor Bass. You don't have the police union, the LAPPL. They have endorsed Mayor Bass. And the question is, where are you going to get your money? Who's going to run your ads for you? Because those unions are going to run for Bass. And you've got this period of time. So just talk about the campaign, the politics, and convince people at home that you'll be able to put up the fight that you need to.
Well, I'm very familiar with the challenges of being an outsider candidate.
Yes, you've done it in 2020.
I've ran multiple times. I've ran twice once with no endorsements, and the second time with fewer endorsements than most incumbents get because of the independence of my voting record.
One of those endorsements was from Mayor Bass.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that is right. But yes, you know, I feel like I've always been an outsider to the system, and I'm still an outsider to this system. And I think the story that I'm telling and the thing I'm trying to tell voters is that in order to fix the challenges that we have in Los Angeles, we do need someone who is not from this political establishment to make a change, to make decisions that are really built not on appeasing vested interests and big corporate players that play in LA City, but really based on how we serve the residents of Los Angeles, how we can make fiscally responsible decisions that really meet the needs of this moment.
So there's fiscal responsibility, very important. That ties into public safety to some degree. A big conversation around your record on policing and the votes for staffing. I mean, we're at like 8,700 officers right now. We should be up to 10,000. Mayor Bass put forward a vote, essentially a request to get $4 million for more hiring. You voted against that. In 2020, people have said, you have said, defund the police. But these days you say we got to maintain staffing levels.
Yeah.
What is the staffing level you want to get to? Is 10,000 the level? Because Mayor Bass is saying we got to get up there. We need more money to do that. Where do you want to be?
You know, I think we need to, I have voted multiple times to maintain our police force and even grow it a little bit. What I have voted against has been fiscally irresponsible decisions that are really driven by what I felt has been political decision making.
So you feel voting against 170 officers, that was fiscally irresponsible?
She could have included those officers in the next, in our next budget, which is coming up. She's going to present her budget in April. And she could have made the request for those officers in the context of all of these other fiscal realities in the city, balance the need for those officers without hopefully laying off other essential city services. But we did it off cycle. We made a big point of having a vote on it in council. I think it's much.
Why do you suppose she did that?
You know, I think people want to make a public show of how they support public safety, when in reality, many of the decisions that we're making around these issues are actually leading to poorer public safety outcomes. If you want to have a real conversation about public safety, you have to have a fiscally sustainable plan to fund it. We are now paying $500 million more for 1,500 fewer officers than we were just a few years ago. And we have paid so much for these officers in our last contract, which Mayor Bass and many others on the City Council supported just a couple of years ago, that we are now hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole. Yeah. And in order to fill that gap, we've cut all of our services down to the bone, even cutting civilian positions at LAPD that would then have to be replaced by armed officers who are pulled into doing secretarial roles, leaving fewer officers to do patrols. To me, that doesn't seem like a great way to achieve public safety goals, and it leaves us absolutely no money to do things like unarmed response or mental health crisis workers who can actually replace officers where they're not needed, take call load off of them, leaving them available for other responses. We can build out a real system of public safety that responds to Angelino's needs if we plan for it.
And public safety is one of these issues. There's housing, homelessness measures, really SB 79. I don't even have time to get into them, which I want to. You and I have talked about for like 14 minutes on some of these issues in the past. We'll do it again. But I gotta say, your Google alerts probably went crazy when you got in. You must have seen the ones in the New York Times that made the most convenient reference point for them in New York with an insurgent candidate who is young and, in the words of many, charismatic and attractive. And they said, that sounds like someone who's running now in LA. And I won't touch the charisma and the attractiveness stuff, but I will say that the DSA affiliation is part of the conversation. Where are you then with your DSA affiliation, and how much do you see then the likeness then of Mamdani in New York?
You know, yes, I'm a younger, progressive person running for mayor, like Mayor Mamdani, who's, you know, I think admirable as a communicator and bringing people into the political process who weren't there before. That's really exciting to me. That's what I did in my first race. That's what I'd love to do citywide now. I also love Mayor Wu in Boston, and Asian woman mayor, also very progressive, a mother of young children just like me, who cares deeply about her city. I think there's a lot of models out there for mayors who are in the mold that I want to be in. And I think it's a really exciting moment to step up. I have been a DSA endorsed candidate in the past. I've also been a very independent candidate. I've also been a very independent person on council. I've taken a lot of votes that have been in line with the priorities of the groups that have endorsed me. I've also stood up and voted against them in the past. including on ULA reform, something that I think is really important because I think housing production is really important.
You know, DSA Firebrand, in a lot of ways, an avatar. Senator Bernie Sanders was here recently. Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to you? Was that an opportunity for you to?
He did endorse me in my first race,
Yes.
which I was really proud of. And I don't know him personally.
Yeah. And he was here talking about the so-called wealth tax. Have you thought about that? Where do you come down on this idea of taxing billionaires in California 5% to fund Medi-Cal and education?
You know, that's a state level initiative.
It is, but it's one that people take a position on.
Yes,
I'm just curious
and I haven't taken a position on that tax yet, but I'm very open to taxing wealthier people more. And, you know, I've supported taxes here in LA County that have been, wealth taxes or taxes, sales taxes that have funded things that I really care about. I will also say that I think tax design is important, like we talked about in Measure ULA and some of the insights of that. So I always want to make sure that we're doing any of these policies in the right way to yield the best results.
And you stumped for Measure A, and that went in an interesting manner with respect to what happened with the county in Los Angeles. We can talk about that some other time. That's a county level tax. I have a quick speed round with you, if I could, very quickly, just a quick line on some of the other candidates in the mayor's race. Whatever you want to say. Even if you don't know him, you can say that too. Spencer Pratt.
I'm so sorry he lost his home and is in the fires, and I'm very impressed with the advocacy that he's done for his community.
Tech CEO Adam Miller.
I have met him on issues related to homelessness, and impressed with the philanthropy he's done after he's made a lot of money in the business world.
And DSA candidate Ray Huang.
I've never met Reverend Ray, but her values and her ability to stick to them, I've watched her over the past few months, and it's remarkable.
Mayor Karen Bass.
An incredible leader who's served her community for many, many years, and someone I've admired.
Well, we have to say we admire you for coming and answering all these questions, and there's so many more, but really appreciate you coming in and having this conversation, and more to come.
Yes, thank you so much.
Congratulations on your candidacy.
Thank you.
It's Councilmember Nithya Raman here on Inside the Issues, talking a little bit about a surprise mayoral candidacy, but one that is getting those Google alerts going, to say the least. We're coming up. Save this. We'll be right back. The Senate Health Committee heard testimony from President Trump's nominee for Surgeon General today. Dr. Casey Means is the author of a book on metabolism. She's also popular in the so-called MAHA movement, that's Make America Healthy Again. She's an ally of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and a critic of the childhood vaccine schedule. That came up when she was questioned by Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who's also a physician.
Do you agree with the need for universal hepatitis B immunization?
I think right now, any parent in America can walk into their pediatrician's office and get access to the hepatitis B vaccine for their child if they want it. And my understanding is that that all insurers have agreed to continue with cost sharing on that vaccine.
I accept that, but is universal hepatitis B immunization, irrespective of what age the vaccine would be given, is in your mind, is that an important goal?
It is accessible to every American family right now.
That's not what I'm asking. Is it an important goal?
I think it is important, an important vaccine. It's a life-saving vaccine. I also think that parents' autonomy and family autonomy.
No one's arguing that, because no one forces the child.
Well, that universal and parent autonomy, but broadly speaking, I believe that parents want to have a good faith conversation without shame with their doctors about vaccines, and that we need to move toward a medical culture where that's possible. And I genuinely believe that will help restore trust in public health.
The Surgeon General position has been unfilled for over a year. Means' confirmation hearing was delayed after she gave birth in 2025. She does not have an active medical license. When we come back, we'll continue to have these conversations about hyperlocal politics. We'll wrap up a bit of what we heard there from Councilmember Nithya Raman, mayoral candidate, give you a look ahead at what's ahead for this week as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back. President Donald Trump called on Congress to pass a law addressing his frequent claims of voter fraud in his State of the Union address last night. The Save America Act would require people to show proof of citizenship when registering to vote, as well as photo ID when casting a ballot. The president also accused Democrats of cheating in elections. Hear those remarks.
Both Republicans and Democrats overwhelmingly agree on the policy that we just enunciated, and Congress should unite and enact this common sense, country-saving legislation right now, and it should be before anything else happens. And the reason they don't want to do it, why would anybody not want voter ID? One reason, because they want to cheat. There's only one reason. They make up all excuses. They say it's racist. They come up with things you almost say, what imagination they have. They want to cheat. They have cheated, and their policy is so bad that the only way they can get elected is to cheat. And we're going to stop it. We have to stop it, John.
And today in Washington, a number of Democrats and election officials held a forum on the president's comments about voter fraud and his previous statements about nationalizing elections. By the way, the John that he just mentioned there was Senate Majority Leader John Thune. The forum, though, was led by California Senator Alex Padilla, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Rules Committee. Padilla also addressed the Save America Act. Take a listen.
It is not a voter ID bill. It is very much a voter suppression bill. It is very much a voter purge bill, and has so much more in that piece of legislation that should concern people.
The hearing included some of Padilla's Democratic colleagues, including his fellow California Senator Adam Schiff. California Attorney General Rob Bonta was one of the witnesses, along with election officials from Georgia and Arizona. Interesting to think about the way both California senators figured into last night's State of the Union activities, with Senator Schiff not attending in favor of one of the alternate programming moments, and Senator Alex Padilla delivering the Spanish language response to the president's State of the Union address. That is a California look at what we've been seeing, but tonight we had a good Los Angeles and Southern California look overall at the issues of the day, including post-production and incentivization and runway production. Thanks to Assemblymember Nick Schultz for coming on to talk about that, and thanks to mayoral candidate and LA City Councilmember Nithya Raman for coming in and answering some questions about that candidacy. An abbreviated timeline until the June primary. Going to be interested to see how it goes. Thanks for your trust and your time. See you tomorrow night.